This is Show Me the Nuggets with George Troy. Welcome back to another edition of Show Me the Nuggets. I'm Eduardo Trinidad, podcast producer. We've had a lot of great guests this year, and we've got a lot more of them lined up ahead. As we gear up for the remainder of 2020, let's finish out the mid-year recap today with our top takeaways Part-2. You can check out Part 1 by going to our Apple Podcast page or by going to digitaltriggers.io. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Here we go.
Yeah, man, I love a couple things that you said. I want to point out and make sure that everybody got. I love the full circle analogy, right? And really plugging into the practice management and systems and really understanding what's happening in the business, because I feel like most agencies, they stop right as soon as the lead is delivered, right? Like they're not doing any coaching at all with the front office staff. They're not doing any coaching with anybody that's handling the phone or looking at any other parts of the business, and they just stop there. And I see most agencies, I feel like, fail their clients at that level. Even if they're doing their job bringing in leads, so to speak, it doesn't mean that that's profitable for the local business that they're working with.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge is that if you don't look at everything throughout the entire system, you can't justify your worth in a lot of cases, and you don't know if it's really working. I mean, everyone says they have the best marketing solution out there. I think in a lot of cases, a lot of people do a pretty good job. It's very similar. They just fail to show the business how it works, and that it did work, or it's not working, and why, and where to fix, where the issue lies. So, if an agency is just sending people to a website, they've got a website, they've got ads, maybe they do some call tracking because it's easy to put a tracking number on the site and then say, here, doctor, or here, business owner, go listen to this, these calls, which they won't do, that. Then you're just kind of at a disadvantage because you don't really know your numbers, and you don't really know, maybe the website isn't converting, maybe the messaging's off, maybe there's something else going on. Maybe your call tracking number is broken. I mean, I don't know. I've seen it all though. Or the person at the front staff, they hired somebody new, and that person, while they think they're doing everything right, they're missing something. We've seen it all, and if we can solve for that, then we provide more value, but we can actually then correlate the revenue we generate. Because even if your website is, if you're an agency and you put up a great ads and you've got a great website and you're driving a lot of leads, but the practice isn't seeing that, they're not able to basically quantify that or attribute what that has done to the growth of their practice, they're going to blame you for it. And I mean, I've seen more cases where the actual patients coming in from the internet were going up, but retention or the churn rate also went up from other areas, or they stopped. The practice stopped doing other types of marketing, but the agency didn't know about it. So then the practice owner says, well, I'm doing the same amount of revenue I was doing a year ago, and I'm not making more money. Well, you are in this area, but nobody tracked, so you don't know. And so having that information can ideally help educate that practice owner that isn't as business savvy to say, hey, listen, this is working, or here's the issues that we're identifying, and here's how we solve for them, or what we need to do to get these fixed. And man, like I said, we had a guy, dental practice, that brought in his brother that recently had an MBA and thought he knew it all, and he came in and made a bunch of changes to their operations, and just over the course of 1 month, they were losing like $80K in collections. And I mean, they called up, brother called up, yelling at the team, blaming us, and our data showed like we haven't changed anything. The number of leads are still coming through. We could get phone calls. We actually had analytics into the software, the tracking, the software tracking into their practice management software, and we could tell that the front end patients were still coming through. It actually was a back end issue, but they didn't know it because they didn't know what to fix, and they didn't know what to solve for. And that just happens. Like, dentists go to school to be dentists and not to be business owners, and a lot of times they don't know. And so once we were able to show them that, then we sent in a coach and helped them get that stuff fixed. But initially we took the brunt of the blame and had nothing to do with us.
Speaking of upsells, Ezra, Obviously, with that, you see lots of funnels, you see lots of what's working, what's not. What's kind of the 80-20 in terms of upsells? If somebody's running an e-com site right now or helping a business run an e-com site and they're not doing any upsells, what would you advise them to do?
So the thing to really understand about e-commerce is there's only 3 metrics that matter. First one is cost per customer acquisition. How much does it cost you to acquire a customer? You should never pay, ever, more than double the amount of profit that you make on an order to acquire somebody in the cold pillar. So there's 3 pillars. The way I view business is in 3 pillars of advertising. Awareness, people who don't know about you yet. Retargeting, people who've engaged and not bought. And loyalty, people who bought before. In the awareness pillar, where you're bringing new people in the door, you should never pay more than double your profit. If you make $40 profit on an order, never pay more than 80 because you won't make that back on the back end. If you pay 80, you can make that back. If you pay 90, you're not making that back. So never pay more than double for your cost per acquisition. And the goal is self-liquidating customer acquisition. If you show me a business that can acquire customers for the same amount of profit they make on that first order, I will turn that into an 8-figure business because you have customers coming in the door and you're not paying for them. They're just coming in free. Now you got all these people you can engage, upsell, cross-sell. So average order value, cost per customer acquisition, CPA. Next is average order value, which is the question you asked about. In e-commerce, whatever way you want to do it, you want to do it online, you want to do it on Shopify, you want to do it on Amazon, you want to do it in the tactical market, you want to do it in the baby market, whichever way you want to do it. 3 out of 4 customers who buy, you'll never see them again for the rest of your life, ever. So average order value is the second most important metric in all of e-commerce. You have to get your average order value up, which means upselling and cross-selling at every stage of the sales cycle on the product page, in the shopping cart, post-purchase one-click upsells, offering bundles. You have to do it because that 3 of those 4 orders, you're never coming back. And then the third metric is lifetime customer value, and that comes down to the 25% of people who do buy once or do buy twice. Can you get them to buy 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times? And that comes down to your ability to do content marketing, product launches, and sales campaigns. So those are really the only 3 things you ever have to focus on in e-commerce: cost per customer acquisition, average order value, lifetime customer value. And then the tools that you use to increase those things, like average order value, or upsells and cross-sells, which just go to zipify.com, zipify.com, and now I've got a whole business based on how to get the average order value up through upsells and cross-sells. But it's better, it's more important to understand the higher level of it than the actual technical tactical, because we only got 30 minutes here, and I can teach you the technical tactical on my site, but I have to get you to understand the reasoning for it.
So I like those metrics. Double is good. Obviously, you want to be at liquidating or as close to it as quickly as possible. And I never really thought about the 3 quarters are gone forever. That really
They're never coming back.
Sink in. They're gone.
And I have a 40% repeat customer rate on Boom, which means 40% of my orders come from people who bought before. But that does not mean that 40% of people buy twice. It means that a quarter of people buy twice, and some of them buy 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times, right? So you're losing 75% to 80% of people. They're gone. They're never coming back. They buy one thing from you, and that's it. And that's in any business. It's like that. So that makes it like much more important that you figure out how to, increase that average order value through offering add-ons, through offering additional products, through bundling products, through offering discounts right after they buy via one-click upsells. You got to get good at that. It's so important.
All right. So in February at the mastermind where we reconnected, you made a awesome little quick presentation that I got really fired up about dynamic keyword insertion, or DKI. And for those of you guys that don't know this, if you're running Google Ads, this can be a game changer. I'd love to have you share quickly what DKI is, what it means, and then I know that you shared with the group the key thing, that plugin and the tech that you are actually using to get it done. So for me, I've been using, as we talked about, DKI for many, many years. we always built out the sites in just PHP and HTML because we didn't know how to do it in WordPress. And then, I'm at this mastermind and Lynn's like, look at what we're doing in WordPress with DKI. And I'm like, oh, that's possible. And I've tried lots of plugins for it, but I was never able to really pull it off well. So super excited to have you share a little ninja hack or ninja tip with us.
Yeah, cool. I mean, that's sort of the nerdy side of me, is I love the technical side, but at the same time, we've got to make these things. We would build every site in just PHP or straight code if we could, and we wouldn't have any plugins. But at the end of the day, the client would be able to use them. And so we've had to sort of balance, code, the size of the code and whatever, with the ability for the client at the end user to be able to use the site. It's interesting when you actually do what you say you're going to do, and you can actually deliver websites in the way that you say they're going to do. Other agencies start asking you, what else can you do? How, I had an agency, Lynn, I had lunch with my family the other day, and it was the first time in so long that I've relaxed, because I know we finally have the best product on the market. And that's just a reflection of the fact that we're delivering their websites for them. And so that's a really good feeling. And then that guy says, hey, could you do our SEO for us? Or, where else can I cut? I was able to cut here or cut there. And so then, we've expanded, now we do some white label SEO, we do some white label pay-per-click, and so on and so forth. And part of that pay-per-click, obviously, as you very well know, is having great landing pages. Anytime you're trying to do any of this stuff at scale, you've got to get really creative, and you've got to get really smart about, sure, you could build 100 different landing pages, but who wants to? So we found a plugin. It's called DKI. We drop a link somewhere so you can share it with your listeners. But it's really inexpensive and allows you to do DKI right in WordPress. And so we're building out really nice landing pages. You can DKI just about anything in. So we're dropping in the city names, we're dropping in the service, we're dropping in the actual keywords, and we're filling those things out onto the page. And if you know anything about quality scores, having the quality score is everything. It's the difference between paying $10 a click and $2 a click is your quality score. And so getting the quality scores right, getting the landing pages right, getting the right words and the text on the page, and really optimizing those things out is going to be a game changer for anybody doing pay-per-click.
So when you think about niching down, and you think about your first agency versus now and what you're doing with childcare, what do you think niching down has afforded you to do? Like, what are the benefits at the end of the day? Because I rant and rave about this all the time with agencies that I work with, but it's always nice to hear somebody that's actually has an agency and they're reaping the benefits and the rewards, actually give their perspective, instead of me just saying, yeah, you should niche down.
Sure. So, with the first agency, profitability was among the biggest weakness. And the reason that we never could really continue to sustain profitability was that every time we got a new client, we were having to invent a completely new process. So if we were doing Google AdWords, we were having to research the industry. Like when we got this big financial advisory firm, we knew nothing about FINRA compliant, like all these. So like we thought we could write ads that said, our firm is going to help you make 20% a year without any, we didn't thankfully run those. Like when we submitted our first set of ad copy, and the VP was like, none of this I can get through compliance. And I said, what do you mean with compliance? I said, and that kind of started to show our inexperience. So we were constantly reinventing the wheel. So the beautiful thing with having the niche is that you have repeatable ads that work. You have repeatable copy. You have testimonials in that same niche, because now more than ever, people are feeling like they're going to get burned constantly. Almost everyone that we've worked with has worked with an agency before, and usually they say, I had a bad experience, so show me other childcare centers you've worked with. Show me, I want to see some of that. But the other thing that, without getting too techie, is that obviously that whole Facebook pixel, you're gathering all that data, and you really become more of a data engine, and you're able to leverage artificial intelligence. You're able to, build the master pixel. A lot of things that if now all of a sudden you're working with 100, I don't know, landscapers, for example, and you've got all this data, you're able to start to see, well, what are the ideal prospects look like for all these different landscapers, and leverage that data so you get your ad costs down, but you can also start generating results faster. So rather than it taking, so when we were launching clients that weren't in a niche, I mean, it might take 45 days to get up and running if we're having to do all the research, figure everything out from scratch. Whereas if you've got 100 clients already, or even 10 clients, you're hitting a couple of buttons, you're taking stuff live, and you're already driving stuff through Facebook, through Google, et cetera. So it definitely, from a profitability standpoint, from a quality check standpoint, because if you're taking clients in all different niches, how do you establish benchmarks? You don't know if the lead should cost $50 or if it's a $500 lead because it's a bankruptcy attorney. I would have absolutely no perspective unless I was leveraging someone that's already been in the industry. So
I think what you just brought up there at the end too, lead cost and lead quality is uber important, right? And unless you've been in a niche for quite some time, there's no way for you to really know what that's supposed to look like. And I find that most marketers then rely just on what the client says. The quality should look like this, price should look like this,
Sure.
And they only know their campaigns, their results, and what their kind of goals are. They don't understand what's happening in other states and other cities. They don't understand, the market as a whole, like an expert like yourself in child care would.
Oh, exactly. I mean, and it's one of our biggest competitive advantages that, I'm able to say very quickly that we know your industry. We know what things should cost. We know how long it takes. We know the seasonality. And a lot of us, myself included, have shiny object syndrome, especially when COVID hit. One of my first reactions, and I started going down the path until I caught myself, was I need to add another niche immediately. So I'm like, well, what are the niches that are recession proof or that aren't affected by, well, medical and attorneys? But then I'm like, why wouldn't we want to double down and continue to serve the clients that we are already working with? Because now they need us more than ever, rather than us kind of not turning a blind eye, but just because some of them are really struggling, and a lot of childcare centers, they're getting hammered right now, and it's not an easy time for them. But this thing ain't gonna last forever. We're gonna come out of it, and so I almost made my same mistake again. So I think history sometimes repeats itself. But once I started telling my team that, like, hey, let's pick another niche and let's start doing some lead gen, and they're like, what are you talking about? You need to stop that. So I'm glad they cautioned me on that and stopped me right in my tracks.
That entrepreneurial ADD will get the best of us all the time.
Exactly.
So I want to talk about what you are doing with social media and your repurposing. I think that you guys are doing a killer job. I don't know if you're doing it, Jim. Whoever is doing the repurposing for you guys is crushing it. I think you're doing great with that. But before we do, what do you think I'm missing potentially, Jim? Like, what's the 80-20, or what haven't we talked to yet about in terms of podcasts that you think potentially we're missing in this conversation?
It's really the opportunities outside of the podcast with the content of the podcast. And I think that's where you're going with it, that, there is so much opportunity for the content from the podcast. And that was what I mentioned earlier, is I have a different goal, right? And my goal is authority. And so taking the content that you create and repurposing it is the core of all of our marketing efforts. From what we repurpose with our book, to what we repurpose with the podcast, to what we repurpose with our monthly webinars, everything that we do, all of the content is repurposed and distributed over and over and over again on multiple channels, and just to gain exposure. So it's impression share, and our impression share is high. So
that's awesome. Absolutely love that. I think you guys are doing a brilliant job of that. I'll make sure to link up in the show notes, you guys on social and your blog, and where I'm seeing it being posted. You guys are doing a great job with that. What do you think is the 80-20 of that? What's important? What are the systems? Like, what are the things that, if you could say, like, Joe, just do this, or just do these one or two things, what would you tell me in terms of distribution and repurposing?
So the first thing that I did, which was the easiest thing, and that was I used an app, Headliner, to take cuts out of my podcast. So I created an image, an image background, and then you just go to Headliner. And a lot of times, I think Headliner has a podcast integration now where you can actually pull your episode up and chop it up, right? So the macro is you take your 30-minute conversation or hour-long conversation, and you take my goal is to take as many 59-second clips out of that as possible. So 59-second clips are Instagram clips, but they go out on Facebook. We push them on LinkedIn. We push them on Twitter, and so those 59-second clips, out of every conversation that I have with a podcast guest, I get between 25 and I think the highest I got was close to 60 pieces of content from that episode. So now we have the large piece of content, right? We have the podcast episode. So now we have 12 podcast episodes. We probably have 400 pieces of content that have come from those 12 podcast episodes.
When you look at strategies at FreshBooks and what you've been able to accomplish at FreshBooks, I'm curious, like thinking back, like what do you think has been the 80-20 of building links? Like either from the most powerful links, the best quality links, the most volume of links, like just what stands out? Like what's your top one or two strategies?
I would say that trying to get links from pages that are like focused on the topic that you're focused on. So if that's a link to an invoice templates page, like that that article that you're like trying to that you'd love to get a link from is also talking about invoicing and invoice templates particularly, that it's not just like some article about I mean, nothing wrong with this, but like not as powerful. It's not an article about starting a business, and then like invoicing is just like one thing in many aspects of that article that it talks about. So yeah, I try to get those links from pages that are like highly focused.
Okay, so very, very topically related or very, very focused. What would your pitch or your outreach method or your message be, right, to somebody that has a page about invoice templates? Like how have you guys been able to make a pitch that's appealing, right, that gets you guys that beloved link, but also is a value add, or maybe it just isn't a value add? That's you've just asked enough people that it's happened enough times. What's kind of been your strategy in terms of getting that link then?
Yeah, I'll give you an example, not specifically for that, but also just like another way that we approached link building. So we get a lot of links. Like one of the things I think I've been thinking about recently is like, what are real world signals that show Google that you're an authority? It's probably, all those blogs that talk about best tools for entrepreneurs, best tools for small businesses, and like things like FreshBooks, QuickBooks, Xero are like obviously like mentioned a lot on those types of blogs, right? Like those are like really strong signals that you've got all these sort of entities laddering up to one topic. And so we identified, I can't even remember, but it was something like 2,000 blogs that mentioned FreshBooks in this fashion. So we actually just like reached out to them again and said like, hey, thanks so much for mentioning us here. We've also got this free tool around invoice templates that we think like, if somebody's not ready to subscribe to the software, that this might be useful to them too. Would you mind mentioning that?
All right, man. So let's change the interview up a little bit, man. Let's talk about testing. Like you're obviously widely known as an SEO ninja, right? And breaking down tests and what's working. Talk about what's working now. Like what's the 80-20 of SEO and the marketplace right now? And don't give me, and I know you won't, but for our audience, like Kyle's not going to give us any of the bullshit that we get from so many other SEOs, right? Because he's testing this stuff. He's going to tell us what's working, what's not. Like, what are your priorities right now? Like, what are the big important things that you're like, man, like we got to get in Pop, or our users are just crushing it with these features inside of Pop? What's the 80-20 right now, man?
Well, the thing that I think is important for people to understand is that when Google does updates, and we just had the May update not that long ago, they're not going after the core of Google. When you think of a bell curve, there's, that 70 to 80% in the middle, and then there's maybe like 10 or 15% on each side. That's the part that they're going after, where people are really trying to game something. But it is too cost prohibitive to change how Google actually works in the main sense. They can't do it. And also, who's complaining about Google results? Very few people, SEOs. But like the general populace that is using Google is pretty happy with it. Otherwise, they would be using something else, and they're not. So clearly, the results are good. So Google, while they might have the ability to do AI, or they might have the ability to do deep machine learning, and they might have some aspects of it, that's not the whole thing, because what they originally started with is still working quite well. So it's a matter of, like, when they do these updates, they're trying to get this stuff on the outside. So the biggest thing that I like to tell people is don't overthink it. Don't overthink what you think Google can or can't do. At the end of the day, keep in mind that Google can't read. We prove this constantly. Google can't read what is on your page. It has to look at it how a computer looks at words, and that's from a math perspective. So
I gotta stop you real quick. You're telling SEOs not to overthink it?
Yeah, don't overthink it. Just on the page. You have your target keyword.
Is there any market that has overthought anything more than SEOs overthink SEO?
Well, if you come at it without a framework, if you don't have any kind of baseline, what I find is a lot of SEOs are scrambling month to month to come up with something to give their clients. And then maybe it's the latest and greatest, or I heard this and I heard that, and I've been guilty of this as well, where it's almost like you're auditioning for your job every month. So you have to come up with some wowzers sort of thing, and it usually is off base, or like there's some form of it on base, but if you just really just stayed in your lane and just did solid SEO, where you're just, not to say that I hate the word good content, but just writing good content, and then coming back and editing for SEO so that you're gonna hit what the algorithm wants, you're gonna do way better than half of the SEO schemes out there just with that. And then what if you built some content that supported that page, that was topically relevant, that answered a question about that, and then you link from that page to that page? That's not rocket science. But what's interesting is that the tests constantly prove that works. That's what's really interesting to me, is that we constantly prove that the things that are the most basic or the most straightforward almost always are the best thing. And then when you think about time, budget, energy, those types of things, you're limited. So there's only so much you can do in a day, regardless of the size of your team, and there's only so much money you can spend for a particular client. If you just do the main stuff, you're going to win most of the time. And the tests show that all the time. And it's not sexy, it's not sexy at all, and it's not out of control. And I don't think it's a satisfying answer for a lot of people, because they want the sexy. They want that thing that is just mind blowing. It's like, what we found? This still works. We found that still doesn't work. That kind of stuff. And it's just like, oh, well, I guess I got to keep doing my job. I think a lot of people just want to be able to push one button and it all SEOs, or they have like some magic hack that gets it all done. And really, it's just doing it right. And I think that'll always be. As long as there's an algorithm, as long as it's not manually curated, there's always going to be a need for SEO. And I'm pretty sure within that bell curve, it's all going to stay about the same.
For any entrepreneur, do you think that this is the route, or do you think that, buying and building versus starting from scratch is for different types of people? Or do you think it's for everybody, or who's right for this model, who's maybe not?
Oh my God, great question, Joe. So I think, okay, so yeah, buying existing companies is absolutely not right for every business model, okay? First of all, I want to back up and kind of understand venture capital for a minute, okay? So if you really look at venture capital, we all have these dreams early in our career that it's like, okay, I've got this idea, and man, it is so good. I'm going to take this idea, I'm going to pitch it to venture capitalists, and we're going to raise millions of dollars and run out and try to do this, okay? Slow down. Number one, venture capitalists don't really care what your idea is, okay? Myth. Busted, okay? Number two, what they're really looking for is they're looking for adolescent markets. In other words, they're looking for markets where the timing is just right and it's going to be a land grab over the few years ahead, okay? And the concept is they want to pull in the single best team in the world to execute on that exact, right, adolescent growth, and that's who they want to fund, okay? Even in those situations, 75% of VC-backed firms go completely to zero. Only 25% get an exit at all, okay? But, you look at, the companies that have defined our time, okay? You look at, Uber, Facebook, even Amazon. It's like companies where, these were very, the word disruptive, I feel like is a little off, but they were very unique, game-changing kind of deals that only work with network externalities and a large gas tank, okay? You can't start Facebook by buying MySpace. It doesn't work, okay?
Yeah.
That being said, you look at something like, you look at Elon Musk. Elon Musk is credited for being, a member of the PayPal mafia. He's credited for the founder of Tesla. Let's back up. He actually didn't start either of those. He bought them. The dude literally bought them. Okay, so there was two guys that started Tesla. He came in with a bunch of money, fueled it from his PayPal days, right? And then ultimately became a founder of Tesla, a co-founder of Tesla. Through that, he even got sued for it, for changing his title to that. Secondly, in PayPal, his company was called X, I believe, X.com maybe, and he was competing with PayPal. And what happened was PayPal was doing so well and growing so well that they ran out of cash. X wasn't doing that well, so they had all their cash. So they bought PayPal. So it's one of these where even in these extreme startup examples, you still see acquisitions, occurring at the basis. So to answer your question, Joe, I think that most entrepreneurs are not doing something completely disruptive. Okay, it's like, hey, I want to sell a product on Amazon and just like live the 4-hour work week. Great. I want to start an SEO company in St. Louis, Missouri, where there's already 20 of them. Okay, great. Hang your shingle. Do it. But why wouldn't you just go out and like try to buy 4 of them? Like it's a faster way to getting those customers and getting that infrastructure, and you don't have the pain of that early growth, and you get to dodge all of those startup killers along the way.
So man, I've been holding back, trying to get the complete story and get caught up. But man, I want to know all about this headline, man. The 250K in 1 month from COVID, and how you were able to really, rally during COVID. I'm excited to break down a little bit. I got to know, man, how'd you do it?
Yeah, well, yeah. So like, given like the context, like we were, I think like a lot of people, super excited about 2020. It's like, oh, it's going to be a great year. We're going to hit all of our goals. And we were seeing like our pipeline was looking pretty good. We were finally closing deals that were the right clients, the right price. Whereas most people starting out, you're just trying to take whatever. But we were finally getting selective. And so we're literally about to make 2 hires, and then all of a sudden, COVID hits. And it hits quite significantly with us. As I said, some of our clients raise a round of funding. So right away, their cash flow is a little fragile. So COVID hits and it just wipes them out. So we lose half of our business. We're at 7 figures. We lose half of our business in 48 hours. And I'm just like, wow, that hurts. That's like 2 years of work in your pipeline to make that happen. And so, and not only that, but our pipeline just completely dried up. So many clients that weren't essential products just evaporated. So we're, trying to figure out what to do. And it's interesting because I don't know about you, but most ways when you think about growth, you're like, I want repeatable and scalable. I need things for the long haul. And I completely flip that script. I'm like, no, I care about non-scalable and immediate. I don't care if it's repeatable. Let's just kind of fill the pipeline. And so one thing, I think a lot of people, whenever you have a problem or an issue, you kind of like think you have to take it all on by yourself. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not smart enough for that. I should probably find the smartest people I know. I'm just going to lay out my situation, lay out a strategy, and get their feedback. And so I did that. I have like an executive coach. I have kind of like a marketing mentor who's like a high up at a publicly traded company, and like a kind of a founder mentor. He's actually younger than me, but he's been in the game longer, and I get really good advice from him. So I just laid out, okay, here's the situation, here's what I'm thinking, and we kind of came up with a plan. And so we decided so many people are looking around for advice. It's like, how can we be thought leaders right now? So whether it's like pulling together data that we're seeing from the landscape that we're in, and also doing historical data on, COVID hasn't happened before, but huge downturns have happened before. What companies emerged out of that successfully, and what are the things they did? So we started just talking about this. We started doing webinars. We started doing virtual lunch and learns. We have an email list. It's not huge, but we were just hitting it up with just content, trying to add value. And by doing that, we slowly started to get the conversation going. The other thing that we did, we got very aggressive with account-based marketing, meaning the companies and industries that were actually impacted positively by COVID, we started doing pre-ads to them and doing essentially email outreach to them. So, and we started spending more on ads. So those three things started to get like that pipeline moving again. And we got lucky that the online education space started to prove very well for us. And same with some e-commerce companies and food delivery companies where you could kind of position them as essential right now. But yeah, those were kind of the three ways we tried to right the ship, and we're able to close some deals because our average retainer, is between 7,500, 10 grand a month. So if you close 3 to 5 companies with a small business like us, that's significant.
It's huge. 100%. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's awesome, man. Congratulations, and way to rewrite the book, so to speak, right? Like completely 180 turn, 100%.
Well, I'm still paranoid, so we'll see, man. Every morning you wake up, it's like, what's going on? So we'll see.